Hi, how you going? We're back again to talk about some more bugs. It's my favourite part of the week. I hope you're all doing well, staying safe and continuing to abide by these wishy-washy guidelines that we've been given. I'm probably not going to start the video like that. Hey, how you going? Welcome back. We're going to talk about a few more bugs today. I hope you're staying safe, you've had a good day and you're well. I'm a little bit tired and a little bit sore after sorting out our delivery today, so I hope you don't think too much less of me if I do treat myself a little bit while we have this little chat. We've got some really interesting bugs to talk about today. Not very many of them, but I think we're going to be able to certainly teach you a thing or two about some of the smaller friends that we have out in our garden, and some that you may not even consider to be friends, but that's a matter of perspective, shall we say. First up is one of my personal favourites, as far as beetles go at least. It is the violet ground beetle, known as Carabus violaceus, which is a very nice word to say, actually. There are actually two species of ground beetle that look very similar to this one here. As you can see from this picture, the violet ground beetle gets its name from that beautiful violet trim around the edge of the shell there. It has a sister species called Carabus problematicus, which I think is a fantastic name. I don't know why they called it problematicus, but what I assume is that they thought there was one species of violet ground beetle, and then they discovered a second one, and thus that second species became problematicus, because it caused a problem for the scientists. We'll never know. There's nothing written about it that I can find, at least. If you can find anything out, please do let me know. Absolutely stunning colours on the beetle here. You can see a little bit of a close-up there of the blue tint on the water drops on the side of the shell. It's magnificent, really. The colours, they really do pop, and the photos hardly do it justice. But honestly, it's incredible in person. Here's a close-up of sort of the full shell. It's a real shame that it's got those two little bits of dirt on its back. I need to get some Q-tips or something to clean my bugs before I photograph them. It's one to remember. And if I zoom this picture out a little bit, you can see the comparison of the size of the beetle next to my finger. So it is not a small beetle at all, actually. It's quite large. They are more than able to give you a little nip as well. You'd have to try pretty hard to get them to bite you, but they are capable of it. And they are hunters. They're awake at night, which is why this one's got its head buried in the ground. It's probably because I disturbed him a little bit, which I did apologise for, but he was still quite ornery about the whole situation. They will hunt snails, slugs, worms, and other smaller insects. Basically anything smaller than them that they can catch, they will try and hunt, which is quite amazing. Even their larvae, so once the eggs have hatched, they turn into grubs, which are very similar, I suppose, to maggots in a way. They're like a long, soft body with a hard head at one end and jaws, and their larvae will actually go out and they also hunt slugs and snails and things. So from the day they're born, they are pretty much bona fide killers. Beautiful bona fide killers, but killers nonetheless. You can find this species throughout Europe, all across Europe, and also in Japan. Funnily enough, those are the only two documented places you can find it, which is quite a strange combination, I think, but I'm not the expert on how bugs end up in different places. Now this is actually I hesitate to use the phrase least favourite, but this is definitely one of the bugs that still gives me the creeps. This is possibly one of the creepiest of crawlies, if you will. A lot of people hate them, but they're here and they exist, so let's talk about them. It is the brown centipede, Lithiobus forficatus, which again is quite a nice one to say, rolls off the tongue quite nicely. They're terrifying, let's face it. They get quite large. There are actually 40 around and about different species of centipede in the UK. Quite a lot of them are very difficult to tell apart. The only way that you can consistently tell apart the different species is under a microscope. I can't afford a microscope, I'm not going to lie to you. So for now, we are just going to say that these photos are all of Lithiobus forficatus. If they're not, I'm sorry. For the sake of keeping it simple, we're just going to pretend. Here's another one of it coming through the leaf litter. I love the shine that you get off the body. The orange colour, it's not so much brown, is it? It is more of an orange. It's quite beautiful when you see it. Doesn't stop them from unsettling me, but they are quite a lovely colour. Here's a very interesting little fact for you. Centipede, as you may know, roughly translates to 100 legs. That's sort of where the name originated from. Lithiobus forficatus does not have 100 legs. It has, in fact, only around about 30 legs when it is fully grown. An even funner fact, when they're first born, they only have 7 pairs of legs, so 14 legs in total. And it's as they shed their skin, same as a snake does as they're growing, with each time they shed, they actually grow another set of legs. So after another, well, let's check my maths, 7, 8 molts, maybe, they have the maximum amount of legs, which is amazing. They actually just grow new legs. How cool. Tell me it's cool. It's very cool. Here's another one, a little bit of a close-up of the armor plating on the back. They're pretty well defended for a small animal. That armor plating is very tough, and they will not hesitate to bite you if you try and pick them up. If you pick them up by the back end, they are really good at swinging their head around and latching on to what is grabbing onto them. So I wouldn't recommend handling these centipedes out in the wild, unless you want to know what being bitten by a centipede feels like. People's biggest problem with the centipedes is just that. It's the fact that they can bite. So funnily enough, the on the front of a centipede's head are not actually fangs. They are legs that have evolved. Now, these legs do hold venom, and they do inject venom into the animals that they are preying on. It's not a great picture. The focus is slightly off, but you can see that the fangs are around about the same size as the animal's head. They really pack a punch, and they are thick. So while the venom isn't going to do too much damage to you as a human, it's more the size of the fangs as they bite you is just going to cause a decent amount of pain. It's just not going to be very pleasant. Here is another type of centipede. This is a much, much smaller one. This is very, very small, very, very thin, about the width of like a bit of string or something like that. It depends on how thick the string is, so it's not a very good analogy, actually. But they're pretty small. I love the colour difference between the body and the head, sort of the orange head and the yellow body really contrasts against each other. These guys are far too small to bite you and break your skin, so these guys, if you manage to find them, you should be perfectly fine to handle. If you do get bitten though, please don't blame me. I can't take any more lawsuits. So, centipedes. You got your centipedes are predators. Closely associated with centipedes, of course, are our friends, the millipedes. Now, to start off, I want to talk to you about one of the coolest types of millipede that I have discovered. I only found out that this family of millipedes existed late last year. I think around about October last year was when I found my first specimen. And I asked a few people who are in the know of that sort of thing, and they told me that it was probably Polydesmus, or a species of Polydesmus millipede, which is also known as a flat-backed millipede, as you can see in the photograph on screen. Their back is a very flat armor plating. Here's a second image. This is their head of another type. You can see the color difference between that first and second photo. Maybe I'll put them side by side here and you can maybe tell a little bit better, but there's a potential that those two may be two different species. Again, same with centipedes. The only way for me to 100% be sure what species they are is get a microscope and someone that knows what they're talking about more than I do, which I have neither of at the moment, unfortunately. Just love the way that the armor plating sort of meshes together, and when they turn you see their individual plates sort of separating and coming back together as they sort of move from side to side. It's really entrancing to watch them move, actually. They're one of the most incredible animals I've ever seen in the undergrowth. Very, very cool. Here's a beautiful close-up of sorry, I just got a little lost in the sauce there. I love the aesthetic of this millipede. It's amazing. You can see that it's not completely flat. The scales on the back do have sort of lumps and bumps and ridges, which adds just this look. Well, you can see the photo, you know what I'm talking about. How cool is that? Very, very nice. This is one that you'll probably recognize a little bit more. It is a black millipede, also known as, how do you pronounce this? Tachypodulus niger. So they are the same as the flatback millipedes and our woodlice friends from the last episode. They are all detrivores, so they eat the decaying plant matter on the forest floor. This species of millipede does have almost the right amount of legs. It's not even close. They have around about 200, so that's around about 100 pairs. Millipede roughly translates to 1,000 legs. So either the person who discovered them and classified them couldn't count very well, or they just didn't bother to count at all. But whatever the case may be, I think you can agree that this is just adorable. So this curling up is something that they do when they're threatened. I don't think this guy was threatened because I was photographing something else when I found him, and I sort of just looked over and there he was curled up. So either something else had threatened him or he was just sleeping. I didn't disturb him too much, I do promise. These millipedes have also been seen eating fallen fruits like raspberries and things like that, along with leaf litter and algae and decaying bark, which adds a little bit of excitement to their diet, I imagine. And unfortunately, these guys are considered to be prey of our good friend Lithiobius forficatus, the brown centipede that we spoke about earlier in this video. These guys will lose every single matchup against that centipede every day of the week, unfortunately. Their armor, as you can see from this photo, the plated armor is amazing, and for such a small animal it's incredibly strong, but it just cannot compete with the biting force of Lithiobius forficatus. That centipede goes hard. This is actually the last picture that I have for this episode. It's another sleeping centipede. I really can't get enough of photographing sleeping centipedes, it appears. They will also sort of, if they feel overly threatened, they flee in a very signed, winding motion, which is awesome to watch, but obviously I don't have it on video because I don't go out there and actively try to antagonize millipedes. But maybe we'll catch the behavior just happening in the wild at some point if I kneel in the wrong spot next time I'm out at the forest centre. That's more or less it for this episode. I feel like it might be a little bit shorter than the last one, but don't you worry, I've got a few plans for another couple of videos that we're going to put together over the next few days. So continue to stay safe, continue to look after yourself, and remember that age-old advice: if your ball doesn't fit in your mouth, it's probably not your ball. Thanks very much for watching. If your ball doesn't fit, what does that even mean?